Okay, here's an argument that people sometimes use to try to refute the deity of Christ. Jesus prayed, so he can't be God. Okay, let's break that down. So of course, this argument is based on the idea that if Jesus was God, he wouldn't need to pray. And therefore the fact that he did pray proves that he wasn't God. Now, there are multiple problems with this line of reasoning, but let's just focus on two. First, the passage that they're usually referring to when they say that Jesus prayed is Philippians 2:7, where it says that he, quote, took on humanity and humbled himself. Now, the context of this passage is talking about the incarnation, right? So of course, the idea here is that if Jesus was God, he wouldn't have needed to become a human being, right? He wouldn't have needed to be born into the world. He wouldn't have needed to live a life, have a family, all that stuff, because he already was God. So, the fact that he did all those things proves that he wasn't God. Okay, I see the argument. But let's actually look at what the verse says. It says that he, quote, humbled himself or emptied himself. The original language there doesn't necessarily mean that he set aside his divinity. What it means is that he took on the form of a servant. So, in other words, it's not saying that Jesus stopped being God and became a man. It's saying that he became a servant while still being God. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's just assume that this verse does mean that Jesus stopped being God or set aside his divinity when he became a human. Fine, let's assume that that's true. That still doesn't deal with the issue of prayer. Prayer is not an action that is mutually exclusive with deity. In other words, just because someone prays doesn't mean that they aren't God. There are many examples in the Bible of God praying. For example, in John 17 we have the high priestly prayer. And throughout that prayer Jesus is clearly praying to God, asking God for, among other things, the glory that he had before the world was. So if Jesus is praying here, and if this argument is correct that he couldn't be God if he was praying, then that means that, in this passage, Jesus isn't God. But the problem is, of course, that this passage is clearly stating the exact opposite. It's saying that Jesus has this glory, that it's his glory, that it was his glory before the world was, and that he's going to have it again. In other words, this passage is clearly stating that Jesus is God. So no, Jesus prayed, but that doesn't mean he isn't God. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. God bless.